The African sun cast a vibrant, fiery orange-yellow glow across the vast savanna, a place where the line between life and death is always razor-thin. Alara, a seasoned ranger, was the vigilant feet of protection in this region. She had a deep, ingrained respect for the brutal laws of natural selection. In her line of work, Alara had learned a core principle: non-interference. The cycle of life and death was nature's way, and sometimes the best action was to stand by and observe. But on one particularly quiet morning, Alara was confronted with something that defied the rules. While patrolling a sector near the northern edge, she noticed an unusual, tiny paw print near a thorny acacia bush, leading to an unnatural, deadly silence. She approached slowly and heard a faint, almost invisible whimper. There, huddled in the meager shade, was a lioness cub. She was emaciated, severely dehydrated, abandoned, and just hours away from death. She looked at Alara with wide, fearful, yet pleading eyes. That gaze pierced through every professional barrier the ranger had built over the years. All the rules shattered in that moment. Alara knew she was about to violate every law. She risked her career and a natural order for this tiny creature. She gently picked up the cub, its body alarmingly light. Alara decided to name the little girl Keto, the Jewel. And so began a journey, a choice that went against all the established norms of the wilderness. The decision to save Keto was an impulsive act, but the responsibility that followed was a grueling, tense battle. Alara couldn't take Keto to the official sanctuary immediately due to the long distance, complex procedures, and the risk of infection. She was forced to set up a temporary intensive care unit at her remote outpost. She quickly sterilized the area, equipped it with basic medical tools, and prepared a special milk formula for big cats. Alara understood that the first 72 hours would be everything. Keto completely rejected all care. Despite her
Keto.
weakness,
It's good
the
for
cub
you.
tried to growl and turned away whenever Alara attempted to bottle feed her. The power of the wild instinct was still there, masked by fear. Alara had to contend with severe dehydration, hypothermia, and malnutrition. They were sleepless nights for the female ranger. She was exhausted but refused to give up. The scene focuses on Alara's infinite patience. She sat by Keto, keeping her warm with cloth-wrapped hot water bottles, gently massaging her to stimulate circulation. Alara was no longer the tough ranger. She had become a mother fighting for her child's life. On the third night, all efforts seemed poised to fail. Keto grew cold and noticeably weaker. Desperate, Alara stopped trying to feed her. Instead, she hugged the cub close, letting her feel human warmth and a heartbeat.
Don't worry, Keto.
She whispered soothing words,
safe here with
promising her she would be okay. Alara had lost hope. She just wanted the cub to know she wouldn't die alone. It was in that very moment that the miracle occurred. Keto, who had been tense and terrified, suddenly relaxed. She leaned fully into Alara, seeking comfort from warmth. Then
That's it,
Keto
Keto.
slowly
You're
turned her
doing so
head,
well.
sought out the bottle, and began to suckle. A tiny weak purr emerged, not a threat, but the sound of life, acceptance, and trust. Alara had crossed the professional line. Their bond was established in that instant. A lion cub had found her surrogate mother. Alara watched Keto sleep, curled up on one of her jackets. She knew the fight wasn't over, but now she had an ally. Compassion had triumphed over duty, and Keto, the jewel of the savannah, had decided to live. After the initial 72 hours, Keto began to grow at an incredible rate. She quickly transitioned from a frail creature to a clumsy, mischievous youngster. Keto's humor stemmed from the complete contrast between the size of a lion and the behavior of a house cat. Keto had no concept of majesty. She was an extremely ineffective hunter, but a professional sleeper. Alara recounted stories with a tone of loving exasperation. Keto could easily take down a wildebeest if the wildebeest was already sleeping. Keto always sought out illogical places to rest. She tried to squeeze into the tiny cardboard box she used as a cub, tearing the box apart and leaving her massive body hilariously sticking out. In a small cabin, Keto frequently participated in helping with chores, such as lying on Alera's pile of clean laundry or using the area rugs as toys. She also had a particular irrational fear of the vacuum cleaner that Alera couldn't explain. Keto was also a gigantic Velcro cat. She constantly demanded closeness and often lay heavily on Alera when she tried to read or work on the sofa, leaving Alera paralyzed by her work. Alera lamented, "It's over 200 pounds of fur and claws, but I'm not allowed to move because Her Highness is sound asleep." This humor reached its peak when Alera's colleague, Mark, visited the outpost. Mark walked into the cabin and nearly choked on his shock. Keto, now grown, was sprawled out, completely occupying the living room sofa, nonchalantly dangling her paws over the armrest like an oversized house cat. Mark burst into laughter, unable to believe the once fearsome cub now behaved like a pet. However, the lighthearted moment didn't last. Mark seriously reminded Alera, "No matter how funny she is, Alera, Keto is growing too fast. The wild instinct is undeniable. You need a plan." Alera knew Mark was right. Though her love for Keto was boundless, she couldn't strip the lioness of her destiny to become a queen of the savannah. The deeper their bond, the greater the pain of the impending separation. Alera began to understand that the greatest act of love is letting go. Time does not wait for emotions. Keto quickly reached the subadult lioness stage. Her strength and predatory instincts emerged, despite still retaining her funny house cat habits. Now, Keto's playful roughhousing was too vigorous for the cramped cabin space. Alera realized that her love, if retained, would become a punishment for Keto. Alera began searching for the ideal wildlife rehabilitation center, a vast, specialized sanctuary where Keto could learn to survive and live with other lions, not a zoo. Alera knew she had to save Keto from herself. Alera started taking steps to reduce Keto's attachment. She intentionally kept her distance, leaving Keto alone for longer periods, creating complex scent-tracking games and simulated hunting challenges to stimulate her natural instincts. Her inner turmoil was evident in the nights she quietly cried, watching Keto from afar, knowing that every act of distance was a step closer to Keto's freedom. And then the day came. The process of transporting Keto was stressful and difficult. Once Keto was secured in the transport crate, Alera opened the crate door and stepped inside to say a final goodbye. She hugged Keto's massive head, feeling the thick, warm fur. Her tears fell, soaking into the golden coat. She whispered her final words, a wish for a free, strong, and happy life. The truck carrying Keto drove away. Alera stood alone in the cabin, which suddenly felt empty and cold, watching the vehicle disappear into the savannah. She knew Keto wouldn't understand the reason for the separation, but she believed that this act of letting go was the highest proof of a mother's love. Keto had been saved, and now she was on her way to finding her true place in the wild world. A few weeks after Keto was relocated, Alera visited the observation area of the rehabilitation center. She stood silently, watching Keto from a distance. The lioness had now integrated into her pride, learned to survive, and let out her first genuine roar of a true queen. Alera whistled a familiar tune. Keto turned her head, looking straight at her. She didn't run over, but let out a deep, powerful roar. Not an invitation, but a confirmation of her place and her freedom. Alera smiled, tears falling. She knew that this separation was the victory of love. Years passed. Alera continued her work as a ranger, but she was changed. She always kept Keto's old milk bottle as a memento of compassion. She believed that Keto was living the life she deserved. And then the miracle happened. Late one afternoon, Alera was working at her outpost cabin. She was startled by a familiar roar. She looked out into the yard and saw a small pride of lions approaching. The lead lioness, with the small, unmistakable scar on her ear, was Keto. Keto had returned, and she had brought her cubs. Keto approached the door of Alera's cabin and gave a small, inviting roar. Alera recognized the gaze, the look of absolute trust. It was not the look of a wild beast, but the look of an old relative. She did something no one in the reserve would dare. She opened the cabin's large sliding door. Keto, perfectly calm, walked into the house, followed by her cubs. Keto went straight to the old sofa, the spot where she used to sleep as a cub. The lioness jumped up, curling down into a position of complete relaxation. She lay there, allowing her cubs to climb, gently scratch the upholstery, and play on her and the sofa, as if this were completely natural and safe. Ilera stood silently, witnessing the extraordinary reunion. She did not move. Keto lifted her head, looking at her one last time with deep gratitude. She hadn't come back to be a pet. She had returned to prove that love had conquered and life had multiplied. She brought her family to visit their first home, acknowledging Ilera's success. After a few precious minutes, Keto stood up, gently leading her cubs out of the house through the sliding door. Ilera closed the door. She was smiling and crying. Love is not possession. It is planting the seed of life and seeing it flourish. Keto had shown her that her work was successful. Keto's story truly is a miracle. It shows us how fragile the boundary is between the wild and compassion. How do you feel about Ilera's choice? Would you dare to break the rules to save a living creature? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss other inspiring stories about love and life.